Shabbat Shalom. And before I forget, I'll remind everyone that we have Musaf meditation right after this Dvar Torah, and I believe it's going to be in Katz. Okay, I believe Pius is taken, so I believe it's going to be in Katz. Great. Okay. I have to admit, I have often had trouble getting into TV shows with anti-heroes. It's been very popular over the past 20 years. There's a lot of great television. I spent several episodes trying and failing to get into Breaking Bad. For those of you who love the show, I'm sorry. I know I missed some good TV. The plot was fascinating, but ultimately, I just couldn't care about any of the characters. There was nobody I was rooting for to succeed. I didn't want the main character to succeed. Shows with complicated characters, I'm all in. But when I can't root for the protagonist, it's hard for me to keep going often. Not always, but often. In our Parsha, at the beginning, Joseph is maybe a little bit of an anti-hero. At 17, he's obnoxious, he's insensitive, he's self-involved, he's immature. He tells negative stories about his brothers to his father. He flaunts his special coat, proof of his father's favoritism to his brothers. He brags about the dreams in which everybody worships him. And he doesn't seem to have a sense of awareness about how his presence impacts others. He lacks empathy for his brothers who crave their father's love. And in his dream and in his mind, the world revolves around him. It's not hard to see why Joseph's brothers would be resentful of him, why they might even wish him gone. If we were his brothers, we probably would have resented him too. It's understandable why, as the Torah says, Lo yachlu dabro l'shalom. They could not say a single civil word to him. Of course, the horrible act of violence that they took towards him can't be justified, but it was provoked. Joseph was not easy to be around. Later on in his story, of course, it turns out that Joseph has many strengths, and he comes to use them for the benefit of others. He is responsible, able to successfully manage a household, then a prison, and then an entire country. He is insightful, able to interpret dreams and make predictions. He is resourceful, making the best of difficult situations, such as when he asks Pharaoh's butler to remember him, which eventually leads to him being freed from jail. He has foresight, using restraint, showing patience, and planning for the future as he makes plans to save Egypt and the inhabitants of surrounding countries from a famine to come. He even develops generosity of spirit, insisting that it is God and not he who interprets dreams, and forgiving his brothers who so callously nearly killed him and sold him into slavery. The anti-hero becomes an actual hero, saving the lives of his family members and of all of Egypt as he sustains them through the terrible famine. Now, how is it that Joseph, the insensitive, self-involved teenager, grows up to be a caring, successful, generous adult? It certainly doesn't seem to be thanks to his father, Jacob, who, despite his love for Joseph, generally seems to let him get away with whatever he wants without providing an outlet to channel his strengths productively. Jacob fails to guide Joseph towards respectful behavior, and instead his overt favoritism widens the gap between Joseph and his brothers. In contrast to Jacob, Ora Horn-Prauser, in her book, Esau's Blessing, How the Bible Embraces Those with Special Needs, she sees God as providing guidance for Joseph that allows him to grow into an empathetic person who understands the impact of his words and actions on those around him. Dr. Hornbrauser sees Joseph as intellectually gifted, but at first emotionally immature. And she sees God as acting as a master experiential educator, giving Joseph experiences which challenge him to grow, to reflect, and to change as a person. She explains, teachers of the gifted must avoid simply transmitting material and instead foster conditions that allow students to learn on their own. God reveals to Joseph neither the divine self nor the divine plan, but rather lays out the pieces and gives Joseph the time and space to synthesize the material. Joseph, fearless in the face of the puzzle of his life, is just the student to respond to God's pedagogy. In her telling, God sets up situations where Joseph is able to succeed and be brought down and try again, and to learn how to come across positively to the people around him and to play to his strengths. This allows him to exercise his innate leadership skills and intelligence and to grow as a person. Joseph's brothers weren't able to see his strengths until he had grown and until a lot of pain had been inflicted. It's possible, however, that a closer look at Joseph as a child may have helped his brothers to see his strengths and to feel empathy for him. Despite being his father's favorite, Joseph never really fit in. His mother was dead, so unlike his 10 half-brothers, he didn't have a mother who could guide, support, and take care of him. And his father seemed unable to fully take on that parental role despite his love. He was the second youngest of his father's children, and Benjamin may have been significantly younger than him. The Torah tells us that he served his siblings who were closest in age, the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, but the language of assisting them makes it sound like he may not have felt socially connected to them, even before he started telling tales about them. Joseph may have been different in other ways as well. The Torah uses the term yefeh toar, beautiful of appearance, about him, a term which is otherwise used for women, including Joseph's mother, Rachel. In the collection Genesis Rabbah, the rabbis elaborate, explaining that he cared greatly about his appearance. Mimashmesh be'enav, mitaleh be'akevo, mitaken b'sa'aro. He touched up his eyes, he lifted up his heel, and he fixed his hair. From this description, Joseph may have been somewhat effeminate. The rabbis later suggest that not only Potiphar's wife, but also Potiphar himself was enamored of Joseph and tried to seduce him. So Joseph's gender presentation and maybe his sexual orientation may have been non-normative for the time. It's possible that this may have made it even more challenging for him to get along with his 10 older brothers. Luckily for Joseph and for everyone around him, he eventually did grow and learn how to interact appropriately with others, perhaps with God's help. His story, however, provides a reminder for us all. We have all been in situations where we or someone around us did not fit in a situation or maybe was not at our best. And yet, none of that means that we or those we interact with don't have unique strengths and something significant to offer to those around us. Joseph's story is a reminder that even when someone may seem irritating or hard to connect with, we may be missing some special things about them. In Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, Ben Azai teaches, Al tihi baz l'chol adam, ve'al tihi maflig l'chol davar, she'en lecha adam, she'en lo sha'a, ve'en davar, she'en lo makom. Do not despise anyone and do not discriminate against anything, For there is nobody that has not their hour, and there is no thing that has not its place. This is a beautiful reminder that we all have strengths. We all have ways that we can shine, even if it might not be apparent at all times. It's not always to see those strengths in others, but when we look, sometimes we may be surprised by what we find. Pirkei Avot is challenging us to find what we can learn from everyone and to recognize what others have to share and to give us. May we all be blessed to see the strengths in those around us and to be able ourselves to see our own strengths flourish. Shabbat Shalom.